company, Colossal Biosciences, on the podcast this week, and
Okay.
they use AI to reconstruct genomes of extinct species like
Oh yeah,
direwolf.
they did the dire wolf, right? That was the thing.
Mm-hmm. And just
Isn't
like
this the
Jurassic
plot?
Park,
What
yeah,
was
it
that?
has a lot. Just like Jurassic Park, it
I was
has a
gonna say,
lot of
doesn't this sound like the plot to Jurassic Park? This doesn't
it has
sound
a
very
lot of
smart.
engagement with children apparently around the world. They like write them letters about how cool it is what they're doing.
Yeah.
Very, very good. It's such easy marketing and PR. And just show like little cute puppies on YouTube Live.
So
Live
I'm
stream.
curious, like, what were they? Is this just like some rich guy who wants to like what's the like do you remember a number of years ago there was that company called Niantic and they created a
Pokemon Go.
before Pokemon Go, they created a capture the flag game, like the blue team versus the red team.
Hmm.
And then they created Pokemon Go. And later it was revealed, everybody who was in the industry already knew this, but later it was revealed that it was an intelligence community thing where they were trying to get highly accurate data about the world, right? So, like, if you have everybody take pictures of different buildings and stuff, that was the whole point of it. And so I'm kind of curious if this colossal biosciences thing is something similar where like it doesn't
A lot of their investors are. I mean, he mentioned on the podcast that In-Q-Tel is an investor in this company.
yeah, so like that's what I mean, right? Is like what, because there's no as a sort of a first order thing, there's no path to liquidity for a company that brings polar bears back or whatever, dire wolves and woolly mammoths back from extinction.
Yeah, they're specifically even giving away the technology to help at-risk species to increase their biodiversity. So they're just doing that for free because it's easy for them and they already did it.
Right. And so the question is like, is this like some rich lady who inherited a bunch of money and is trying to, do her
Uh,
husband's legacy, or is there like actually a
he mentioned
national
some of
security?
his investors. So he has a lot of celebrity investors, like George R. R. Martin and Chris Hemsworth, and like yeah, celebrities love this because
Yeah.
they want.
So like, why though? Right. Usually, like, there's a reason why you would get celebrities to push something. So I still, you know, I don't believe that this is just like an altruistic thing. I've never heard or seen of that in history. So.
It's probably some cover because if they have extensive experience with gene editing with animals, then they can easily do it with humans.
Right. And yeah, so is that the idea? Is it's a parallel construction for um, some kind of weapons program. So like there's been rumors that China has been doing
Like geo-targeted viruses, like
geo
person targeted viruses.
well, so okay, so there's a couple things here that are important to understand. The first one is that there are rumors out of China that they've done editing on human beings for a long time. I don't necessarily know whether or not those are true. It seems to a degree to be some kind of like jingoist propaganda. So that's number
Well,
one.
well, they did do one pretty famous editing of CCR5 mutation, which is a single nucleotide polymorphism that if you have it, which a large percentage of the Finnish population has it, it would prevent HIV. You can't
Oh,
get
okay.
HIV, but it also may affect intelligence. And
Okay.
so he mentioned this on the podcast as well. Like it's rumored, like you're saying, that that's the only one we know of, and probably they've done a lot more.
Yeah. So that's number one. Number two is um, on making genetically targeted viruses. It's actually quite difficult to create a virus that kills Joe Perla with the current technology, but it's quite easy to create a virus that kills Joe Perla's family. And so, if you consider that in the West, intelligence community operatives tend to cluster in families, it makes a lot more sense the targeted weaponization of like gene-based viruses. So very, very, very difficult to kill one person, very easy to kill an entire family. And so I thought that
But you
that's
still have also blowback. It would kill more than just that family as well.
I understand, and so my question, is
And
around.
I don't know if it'd be so easy too. Like you can find a gene that's targeted, but you wouldn't necessarily have a way to use that to unlock a virus that kills them
Yeah, so
specifically.
I'm not going to speculate on the way that this is currently done. I would just say that uh, if you look into this, you'll find that it's quite difficult to kill an individual, but quite easy to kill a family on a relative basis.
There's
Um,
here's the article about the
CCR5. Nice.
Chinese scientist.
Anyway,
He
so that might be the woolly mammoth thing. So the thing about the AI is it's an arms race to find genes that can be edited. Great.
it is
Fucking
yeah
great.
it is AI is going to figure out a lot of biology, and we're going to need AI to help with biodefenses as well.
Yeah, my sense is we get back to the science fiction story we wrote together, right? Which is eventually you have to have like an AI organelle in the body that protects you against biologically engineered viruses. And the way that it works is it creates cells that basically eat the virus and kill it and create what looks like an antibody. And we'll find out that we already have those organs.
Well, we have the interesting thing about biosecurity is that Gen Z's already ahead of the curve on biosecure protocols, which means, just never seeing anybody staying at home
Oh yeah, yeah,
on your computer all day and
yeah,
watching live streams of two goobers talking.
yeah. Okay, all right, fair enough, fair enough. Yeah,
Yeah.
you saw. I finally distilled our conversation to like my marker, which is in the future, the poor will exist entirely in Sims, and the rich will create ephemeral physical experiences for themselves and their guests. Like I'm pretty. I'm now
Okay.
100%. I'm now 100% convinced.
But the rich will be just all humans, and the poor are just the AI slaves that we're currently creating with the Tesla humanoid robots, all that.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a weird, like I've tried to make predictions about the sexual marketplace as these highly levered AI slash robotic systems come online, and I don't understand. There's a lot of complexity to it, right? Like, yeah, I've gone through a lot of iterations. Like originally, I thought that having daughters. So if you have like reproductive technology in any scale, like
Like
artificial wombs,
artificial wombs.
like
Okay.
if you have artificial
Oh, he
wombs,
talked
then
about that. Like he wants to make he has to make artificial wombs to get an extinct species back, right? So if
yeah.
you can make
So
artificial wombs
yeah,
of
so the
elephants
basic
and monkeys, like,
yeah, so like artificial wombs is a singularity technology for me. It's really difficult for me to make predictions beyond it, and I'll sort of lay out why I feel that way. Um, if you have a sort of like zero based argument about human utility, one person to the next, then there's no reason if you have artificial wombs to create women on the margins, right? So like a 20th percentile guy who has enough money to create a child but doesn't have enough money to support a wife is going to choose to make a son. And so the if you allow people to select children's sex specifically, the market for women becomes super imbalanced really quickly. And then the rich basically create daughters because it's a status symbol, and the whole thing like blows up, right? Because like there's no marginal utility for like the autistic guy who is basically a feudal lord that supports hundreds of human beings and infinite number of robots and AIs because of his highly cracked way of leveraging the power law on AI. And so like he has all these people that just sort of exist for his own pleasure, right? And like because he doesn't care. And so like this is like an extreme power. So you have like it's basically like Elon Musk has 15 baby mamas, but taken to the extreme, and it's a tiny, tiny, tiny percentage. So like, why do these people do stuff? Um, it's like really. Anyway, as you can tell, I'm not making a lot of sense, and for me, it's because it is a cognitive singularity. I can't make predictions by with like
well, it's
yeah.
funny that your prediction is that there wouldn't be any women, it would be only men, because the alternative could be like now the sexes are equal, so now there'll be like one kind of like will devolve toward one simple
Well,
gender
it is. It is.
between two. That's like a
That's what a man.
feminized man or vice versa.
That's what a man is.
But
So
maybe a
when you
man,
equalize men
man
and
with
women,
feminine characteristics.
when you equalize men and women, you erase women, right?
But you could
Like right now, the World Pool Championships has two trans women, so biological males that became women or whatever, however you conceive of that, and like we can be sensitive to that. But basically, like there's no biological women who are now in that competition, and that pattern plays out anywhere in society where you can have objective measurement. It's like there's no area of human endeavor where women outperform men. And so the moment that you equalize them is the moment that you erase women entirely. Like there's no objective reason to create women. It's completely subjective. Right. So that's why I'm saying like artificial wombs is like a crazy technology. Like if we thought the pill was crazy and cheap abortion in terms of the social effects, like it's really hard to make a prediction on artificial wombs. Really
Yeah,
difficult.
I'm just saying that the alternative could be like it used to be that the woman forms the bond with the baby and then breastfeeds and all of that, and then with artificial wombs, would be that both partners or the men could be the ones being the nurturing parent post womb, in which case the men would have to learn nurturing traits
Yeah,
and
I don't believe that's true because I think
successful families would have nurturing traits built into the men. So then it would all kind of like devolve into this like kind of like a nurturing man
nah,
person
I don't see that, right? Like
without the binarity of it.
yeah, so basically like
That was the plot of the three body problem, by the way.
socially
And
I
in
read
the future, everyone becomes like this kind of.
yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
It does make sense, but
No,
you're
it doesn't.
really against it, so you don't even think about it.
No, it doesn't make any sense because we don't see examples of that currently. The thing that we do
No,
see
I'm talking
examples
about
of,
post womb.
no. The future is unevenly distributed, right? So the thing that we see already is young men who are autistic, who are isolated because of daycare from the mother, right? So if you consider the mother-child system to be a dyad and that they co-evolve together from a central nervous system standpoint and they're embodied, then when you separate that dyad as early as possible, which is what happens when moms go back to work and kids go to daycare, then the kids create sort of like a parasocial way of organizing themselves, and that tends to be what like highly isolated autistic nerds look like. And so my contention is that if you separate out women from the process of birth,
You think daycare causes autism?
yeah, well,
Okay.
it certainly causes a lot of trauma because like kids are not supposed to be separated from their mother for the first 3 years. If you look at every other culture on Earth throughout history, like they wear their babies for a really long time, and because of you could say because of scarcity, but basically they sleep together for a really long time. And our culture is the only one that does this like separate as soon as possible and put them in a different room and sleep train them, which is basically using a biological hack for survival to get the kids to not like wake up the parents in the middle of the night. And I contend this creates like a really parasocial relationship, which is why like millennials, for example, don't want to meet they don't care about their parents. They're basically estranged from their parents, and it's because they were put in daycare, and so they never formed that mother-child dyad. That bond wasn't there, and as a result, they're like, yeah, whatever. I don't care about my parents. Let them go to the old people home or whatever. So like the whole sort of like generation up, generation down structure has been broken because of daycare. And I see artificial wombs as basically not a revolution in terms of the mother baby dyad, but as like a finality to it, right? So instead of taking instead of breaking the mother baby link at 6 weeks, you just break it from conception. So there is a question of like, is it a human being at that point? Because it's not embodied in a way that it's connected, like psycho-emotionally to another person, because it's created entirely in an artificial construct. My sense is it's probably going to be a human being, but it's going to be very, very parasocial in terms of the way that it expresses. And it probably looks like a lot of these like super cracked autistic guys that do today, right? Where you're like, well, what's the thing? Oh, I didn't have any friends. My dad abused me, so I turned to computers. Oh, wait, that's Elon Musk's biography, right? So, like,
I actually okay, that's funny because I see it a bit as the opposite. I feel like if you go to daycare, you get to interact with other kids and have friends, and as opposed to just if you're only with your mom. But you said that there's no examples of this. There are totally examples of men with feminine natures, men who are more nurturing, stay-at-home dads, trans women.
Right, but those
Like
people don't,
the
those,
Bounty
yeah.
distributor. That's an example.
I guess you could say like if they're selecting themselves. So like then the question is like if you have an artificial womb and you're a guy with resources, do you select to clone yourself? Or like how is it that you're creating? Because like I don't think I have a very difficult time that guys at the 50th through the 50th percentile in terms of competence and status are going to create daughters because I just don't see that happening. Guys at the 90th percentile totally will do it, right? And there'll be like an entire rich people thing about like why you should have a wife and
You're
you
talking
know
about how
who.
this is how China has missing a lot of daughters. Like they
Well,
have
so the Chinese thing is also
4
weird because there was like data a while back that when women started marrying, when people started marrying, that these missing women sort of appeared in the civil rolls. And so like did they just not register their daughters or did they actually kill them? I'm sure it's a combination of both. And getting real data out of China is super difficult. So I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I do know they have an issue where their younger generation is smaller and they don't want to do this crazy work for low wages. And so they do have sort of an upside down. Like China needs the robots just as much as the US does in terms of the distribution of their workforce. I'm just trying to think about it like from an economic standpoint, knowing men, and men are the ones who gather resources for women. If you don't need a woman to distribute those resources because you have an artificial womb, then the guys who are gathering it at the lower end of the spectrum, who have just enough money to create one child, what are they selecting in the artificial womb context? And what does that do to the environment, right? So now you have like a instead of a 51-49 split female male, now you have like a 30-70 split female male. So you have all these excess men. And then what does societies usually do? Well, they usually expand. So we're going to send them all to Mars or Alpha Centauri or whatever, or they do war. So like, I don't, like I said, I don't think that artificial wombs is it's like really difficult for me to reason about it because I have, my wife, I've had a lot of conversations with her. And as you know, she's on that sort of like midwife, feminine wisdom track.
Yeah.
And she's just like, yeah, like a society with artificial wombs would collapse because there's all this community structure stuff that women do that's hard to quantify, but that like when it doesn't exist, the communities don't work. And then her point is, if you look at America, like Western towns, so like there's all these boom towns. So all these men show up for gold mine or oil or whatever. We see them in North and South Dakota now. If and then women show up, but usually first as like prostitutes and then not that, like I'm talking about roughnecks, so like the frontier.
Yeah.
If like a certain proportion of women don't show up and start creating a community, then the town doesn't exist. So we have all these examples of towns that appeared, they were there for like 20 years and then disappeared. And then we have all these examples of towns that appeared and then they stayed. And her contention is that the ones that stayed were the ones that effectively were a magnet for women who created communities. And it's those communities which stretch generationally, which allow you to roll over from one generation to the next so the town maintains. So if you remove women from the equation because of artificial wombs at any scale, then now all of a sudden your cities don't exist. And so there's just like all these
Community
weird.
is important, but I mean, so is economics. If the mine closes down, the mine closes down. There's not going to be jobs. Like, people can't survive. They have to export something.
Yeah, but the thing is like but there were a lot of places that started off with a resource curse and then transitioned to something else. And so the question is, why did they transition?
But
And
even
the
the
answer,
transition is economic. It's not like because women started knitting and made an industry out of knitting. Like
I'm not
it's
saying that women did anything economic, but I am saying that they created the structure in which new economic modalities could emerge in that particular area. So that's my
mm,
that's my
they were
contention.
sirens. They were sirens that brought new motivation for the men to create new jobs
I
and
don't know.
industries.
I don't know, but I think it's an interesting point to think about, right? Like why did some towns make the transition and others didn't?
Hmm.
And you always in history it's always written by men for men, so it's like there was this pioneer guy and he was amazing and he created this town, and you never really
Hmm.
talk about like his wife and like all the community organizing that she did. And so the
Yeah.
question is like, because those guys who are on the frontier when they have wives, those women tend to be awesome if you meet them. Like a lot of super successful rich guys who are like quiet about their wealth, if you meet their wives, they're fantastic human beings who are also able to do incredible things. They just don't get the limelight for a variety of social reasons. And so like my question is, we don't see all of these women who did the community organizing, but I think we feel the outcomes of their community organizing. So when they did it well, the town continues to exist. And when they didn't do it well, then the town goes away as soon as there's an exogenous shock, like the mine shuts down or there's some war or poverty thing. I don't know.
Like Tom Brady and his witchcraft wife,
Talking about Giselle?
Giselle. Yeah, apparently she did a lot of like witchcraft to help him win all the Super Bowls.
Oh, I mean, she obviously, like, she hasn't aged at all, right? So I don't know if you believe in any of that witchcraft stuff, but if you told me that she did witchcraft and she did it on herself and then she did it on her husband, I'd be like, yeah, I could believe that.
Hmm.
I'm open to
Mhm.
it at least,
That's funny.
right? Like, there's a history in humanity of sacrificing virgins and drinking their blood or bathing in their blood so you could remain youthful forever. And it sounds completely insane until you read about like the adrenochrome guys. And so
Let's not get into QAnon stuff. Let's talk about AI. So
all
Llama
right.
4 released. The VP was, resigned, and apparently it's cheated on some benchmarks.
Wait, did Boz resign? Because man, if he could get out, that would be great.
No.
It wasn't Yan LeCun.
They're very low. No, it's some VP of something AI.
So is it a bad model? Like, are they rerunning the tests? Like, what's the story? Was it just one portion of the tests or all the tests?
From some comments I heard, it's a bit yappy and in the arena, and maybe it's not as good as it claims on some of the benchmarks. Yeah,
But like, are they 10% off or 50% off?
It would be 10%. But
okay.
My friend who works there, when I was trying to congratulate him, he was like, maybe it's not so great.
Oh, okay.
Reasoning yet either, even though DeepSeek proved that months ago. So it's a bit weird they haven't released reasoning either.
What's weird is DeepSeek open sourced their methodology.
Open sourced all of it.
So you would think if you were a quote unquote frontier AI lab with almost unlimited resources, which Meta seems to be, that you would be able to adopt, like it's way easier to copy than it is to innovate.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
Especially if you have the code. It's a bit.
So that's like weird because I heard that this happened with Grok.
Money and people. So.
I heard this worked with Grok 3 as well, where they were going to release Grok 3 and then DeepSeek came out and then they rapidly changed course. And then they still were able to release Grok 3 a little bit later. And objectively, whatever their version of deep research or whatever, it was way better than I anticipated. And maybe OpenAI still has a lead here, like setting that aside. The fact that like, what were they called? It's deep research, right? What is DeepSeek's what is DeepSeek's company called?
R1. I don't know.
Alpha? No, it's not AlphaFold. I don't know. Anyway, so that Chinese company did innovate, and then everybody copied them, which is that's how that entire industry works, though, and even how it worked before. So it's even more confusing why Llama had these issues, like that it couldn't make it work. Did they like lose a lot of people potentially?
No. I think it could be a problem with too many people, right? They have thousands of people working there. They all have different agendas. They're trying to prove themselves for the next promotion cycle. And so no one, like if someone were to come in, like do everything themselves, even if they could, that would upstage some director or manager there.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot more sense, right? Which is like Facebook. We think about the Facebook product in general, it hasn't really revolutionary iterated. And so it like my most extreme example of this is Airbnb, which looks functionally the same in 2009 as it does today. And so you get this thing where everyone's status within the company is built on their context rather than the content, right? So there's no way to improve the business from a content perspective, like the content of what you're doing. And so only how you do it is what's important and what gets rewarded. And so like what you're suggesting is that context games are the ones that are dominating within Meta, whereas smaller teams of purely cracked researchers, they're still focused on content, and so they can iterate quickly. That's interesting.
Potentially.
Like at the Chinese company and at Grok, we don't see, like, both of those companies, we know quite a bit about their structures, their org structures. And so the question is, like, those people are not trying to jockey to be the next VP. They're just trying to create the best model.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
what I mean by
exactly.
content versus context. So the context is this guy made this successful versus this is successful.
Also, in a big company, I mean, they're hiring amazing people, but they have to not silo them, but give them an exact role. Like, you're building this product for this sub thing and this sub thing, and if you wanted to build this other thing and we're inspired, like, okay, start this 6-month dream transfer process to transfer over there. And in the meantime, 6 months is infinite time in AI world. So you end up with some random set of people doing something that they had planned 2 years ago, and they get kind of stuck doing that as opposed to being able to respond so quickly. Because
So what's your fix for Meta?
OKRs, right? They miss their OKRs that were set 6 months ago.
Yeah. Well, this is why we said that you should only do 90-day OKRs and never longer.
Yeah, I mean, it's only been 90 days since DeepSeek. Like, it still would have screwed you up here.
Yeah. Well, I guess the other thing is, I think AI actually accelerates the OKR cycle from 90 days to maybe like 30 days. Like, you should set 30-day cycles where it's like one day. And you think about it, you have one day that you spend setting OKRs and then 19 days executing against them.
We have 16 people watching, by the way. Hi, everybody. Thanks for
Hey,
watching.
what's going on?
We have to go to the next meeting, by the way.
Oh, you do? Okay. Yeah, fine. Anyway, I think, oh yeah, okay. Yeah, you do.
Good chatting with you.
Yeah, I think the AI, well, I'm sorry that we started late. I think there's lots more to talk about. I have a guy.
We have a lot next week.
I have a lot of agent stuff. So.
Okay, cool. Let's talk about agents next week.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Bye-bye.